This is a gathering of curious minds. It's a community of scholars started with Mitch Daniels. We continue to do so now on a very regular monthly basis across a broad range of topics from all the colleges at the university. And this month and next month happen to be back-to-back College of Liberal Arts. And delighted to welcome some very interesting conversations here. Thanks for joining us. And today we are so excited to have a chance to listen to the lecture by Professor Fenggang, who has been a leading scholar in significance of religion in China and the global East. The title of today's talk, looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Fenggang.
Yeah, thank you so much, President Chiang and Mung, and for this invitation. I really feel honored to be here. And thank you all for coming to this talk. I just want to be sure a couple of things I would say, so that's why I began with what I prepared. I have given some lectures in Europe, in East Asia, Southeast Asia. Wherever I went, I met people who told me Purdue is very well known there. Some of them would say, oh, Purdue is best known as a top school for engineering and agriculture, but it's great to know Purdue is well-rounded with strong programs in social sciences and humanities. One of the last lectures I gave was at Chautauqua Institution in upstate New York. It's outside theater, and after my talk, an old man walked to me. He says, I'm so proud to know that you are a professor at Purdue University specialized in religion in China. You made me feel even more proud for my alma mater. He graduated from Purdue many years ago, so it was nice to hear. Today, I want to talk about this topic. I tried to brief, but there's so much to talk about. The last time I came to give a talk here was more than 10 years ago. Beautiful place. It's good to be back. But over the last 10 years, there's so much has happened. I try to be brief, but perhaps I'll focus more on the tools that we have developed at Purdue that help to understand religion in China and more than China, but global East. I'll explain what does that mean. But some people may begin with wondering, why China, why religion? I have to begin with the sociological imagination. For my colleagues and others may know this notion is the way to understand the connection between biography and history in society. I grew up in a village in North China when and where there was no religion at all. The first time I met a person of religion was after college. In 1983, the first time I met a Catholic nun. I didn't know how to address this person because we were not told about religion at all. Then how come I became a professor of sociology of religion? It's really my personal intellectual curiosity made me first to study philosophy, the notion of logos in Heraclitus. That was the topic of my senior's thesis. From there on, I moved to study Western philosophy at the Nankai University in Tianjin. I know Mung had some connection with Tianjin. So where I studied Western philosophy for my master's degree. And I just find out Western philosophers all talk about God that I knew nothing about. So I did my master's master's thesis on the notion of God in Western philosophy. It's only after many years, and when I turned to the Gospel of John, the first verse says, "In the beginning there was the Logos. The Logos was with God and is God." That's a moment of revelation to me. But anyway, that's after I got my master's degree, I got a faculty position at Renmin University in Beijing as a founding member of religious studies in China in 1987. So that's the time when religious research becomes legitimate in China. Then 2 years later, I got a chance to visit the US and became a visiting scholar at the Catholic University of America. That was 1989. It's a pivotal year for the Chinese. And it changed my personal life, career path, and also is the watershed of the rise of Christianity among the Chinese, both in the US and also in China. Long story short, I met a professor in sociology. He said, "Oh, you can study sociology of religion instead of philosophy." Sorry. So I moved to sociology and did my dissertation in the sociology of religion. When I first came to Purdue in 2002, almost 22 years ago, I saw a window of opportunity opened in China for the social scientific study of religion. I persuaded the program officer at Henry Luce Foundation. Says, "Look, now we can study religion in China, and how about let's help to launch the field of the social scientific study of religion." So that program officer was convinced, and so we started a training program and also some projects on religion in China that I could organize. That was 2003. The program officer came. The way I told her was that I said, "Look, this is a window of opportunity, and it may not remain open for long." But in January, she retired. I wrote a tribute to her. I said, your support at that point really helped us to open the window wider and longer. That's what happened. In the last few years, I could not go to China for fear of problems with the authorities. And my books have been pulled off shelves in China. You cannot buy my books. And actually, some of the journal articles published in Chinese journals have been removed from China's journal databases. So basically, I have disappeared in their minds, or they want me to. Anyway, so here, when I first began to do research, or thinking about doing research in China, of course, I would go back to the classics and thinking, well, not so much on Karl Marx, who said religion is the opium of the people, but Max Weber, the founding sociologist, wrote 2 books that's so important for, many books. The first one is The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. And the second book to that is The Religion of China, Confucianism and the Taoism. And following him, I said, how about if we study the Protestant ethic in the emerging market economy in China? So it was the project I wanted to do, but quickly people keep asking me these questions. What is the state of religion in China? How can religion survive under communism? Which religions are growing or not growing? And does religion actually matter in China? So those questions really not my own priority, but really prioritized by other people. So that's what I have spent 20 years trying to answer some of these questions. In order to answer that question, of course, we have to go back to influential thinking on sociology of religion. Is the very big question, is the world becoming more secular? The man is Peter Berger. In the 1960s, he summarized all the social thoughts up to that point and systematized the theory of secularization. In modernization, religion is inevitably going down. And Europe has become more secular in the last, in modern times. The US has become secular, more secular in recent years, and so must the rest of the world. That became known as the secularization paradigm. That's the way you look at the world. If it's not fitting in this paradigm, there must be something wrong. And so it's more than a theory, it's an ideology. If the world is not secular enough, you make it more secular. So it is actually a program, a long-term program to make society more secular. And what's interesting is 30 years later, Peter Berger said, oh, you know what, my theories were wrong. And after the books on religion, he moved on to study other things. But after several decades, in the mid-1990s, he said, oh, the world is not secularized. Religion is everywhere. It's in public roles. So he said, I was wrong. Then another 10, 20 years later, says, oh, you know, there's something good, I said, back in the 1960s. So he had the last book before his death is The Many Altars of Modernity. I was fortunate to be invited to contribute a reflection or critique of his theory in this book. In that, it's just occurred to me, really, we have to think about secularization as a social movement, perhaps the largest social movement that has lasted for several hundred years. So I call it agency-driven secularization. And China is an exemplar of how do you force secularization to a society. The question is that successful? And how much it is successful? And coming from Peter Berger's theory, I see there are 4 models of religion-state relations that can be considered modern. There's the UK model, there's a monarchy, and the state, there's a state church. Of course, according to Peter Berger, the UK moved from the king or the queen as the protector of the faith to become the protector of faith, plural, freedom of religion. That's the classic UK model. Then the US model, after the revolution, we don't want to have a state church, so there's a separation of church-state. But it's really, at the founding, this is more freedom for religion, treating religions equally. But after 200 years of struggle, the French came up the laïcité in 1905. It is a model of freedom from religion, removing religion from education and public institutions, and put religion under the state. Actually, right, the French model is quite attractive to many cultural elites, political elites everywhere, including the US. And for China, actually, there was another model, it's the Soviet model. saying not only we put religion under the state, if possible, why not get rid of religion for progress of humanity? China has experimented with all four models in modern times. Some want to imitate the UK, have a monarchy with a national religion, Confucianism, but failed. Then, after the Republican Revolution in 1911, the first president of the Republic, Sun Yat-sen, he really modeled on the US. Says, let's have religious freedom for everyone. But his government failed soon. More and more political and cultural elites really favored the French model. Let's put religion behind so that we can make progress for society, science, and democracy. But from this French model is a small step to take the Soviet model. That's how, in the People's Republic, mainland China practiced the Soviet model. In Hong Kong, practiced very much the UK model. But after the Second World War, the Republic of China finally had a constitution. That constitution is very much modeled on the US in terms of religion-state relations. Of course, that constitution of 1946 was suspended for 40 years. Finally, in the mid-1980s, in Taiwan, they began to implement the Constitution. Perhaps that's why after several decades, we see in Taiwan, there's a great religious freedom. Perhaps is closer, even doing better than the US in that regard. Now, quickly move to focusing on the People's Republic of China. Under atheism, there has been multiple policies or measures against religion. Moving from suppression to eradication to reduction to containment. Because each time they try something, they find they failed. And they try another thing, failed. But under the current president, want to try everything at the same time. So my sociological research shows actually none of this has worked to the desired goal. How do I explain this? Well, I'll develop these conceptual tools of political economy, seeing actually there are three religious markets. When we talk about religious market, it's about religious demand, people want religion, and religious supply. People provide religious services, and regulation, maintaining kind of balance between demand and the supply. In the US, you may see only the market, but in China, it's three markets coexist at the same time. There's religions in the red market, is legal, but restricted. There are religions illegal, banned, but they operate. They continue to operate as black market religion. Then there are many people who are not in the red or black market, they are in the gray. It's hard to define them as legal or illegal, like Confucianism, like Mao worship. Actually, it is a religion now, folk religion. And there are also house churches, underground Catholic churches. These are in the gray market. They are not legal, but they are not really illegal. It's hard to handle. Actually, there's a huge gray market in China. The existence of the gray market makes it very difficult to manage, to control, to contain, to reduce, or eliminate. So after developing these conceptual tools, I eventually published this book. Actually, I came to talk about this book more than 10 years ago. Surprisingly, this book did so well, there have been multiple translations into Korean, Italian, Chinese, and Russian. And in Japanese, they translated a key chapter. So I didn't expect this. I thought I was just explaining what's going on in China. But East Asians, Koreans, Japanese find there may be something echoing in their societies. And in Italy, that's a total surprise that they would be interested in this book. Russian is understandable. I'm explaining a communist state that many Russians still have a fresh memory. Anyway, so this was a surprise to see the book getting these translations. I kept moving on. In that book, even though I collected many primary data to support the theory of the tricolor market, the political economic theory, but still there's a lack of data. We need more data. So I've been looking for data all the time, all kinds of data, survey, fieldwork, interviews, and then the Chinese Statistics Bureau actually did a census of economic institutions. Accidentally, they included religious institutions. And once we got the acquisition of that data, says, wow, this is gold mine. But I don't know how to do spatial analysis or GIS, Geographical Information System. It took me really 10 years to learn. And eventually we produced this book, Atlas of Religion. It's an integration of multiple data sources, census data, survey data, fieldwork data, and historical studies of religion in China. As you can see, it's not just what I do, but I really help to develop the whole discipline in China on the social scientific study of religion. I handled the training workshop for 10 years, brought many international scholars to China to provide training, and also established a division in the Chinese Sociological Association called the Sociology of Religion Division or section. Also launched a journal to help people who do the social scientific study of religion to publish. And that is really strongly supported by our college and department. And I had a very good run for 10 years of that journal. And actually the center at Purdue really served as a node in the global network for the social scientific study of religion. That's the journal. It's 10th year. I just got a copy today. And we also had a website on the religious sites in China. Edited books don't count much, but I did a lot. Not so much for myself. It really helped to grow the field. All right. Yeah, here a quick note. Once this president came to power in 2012, before that, it was a popular field in China, the social scientific study of religion, very popular. But since 2010, flat and dropped. After they removed my articles, they prohibited scholars in China to even cite me. If you cite me, you cannot publish. But fortunately, in the last few years, before the censorship in China, I already developed the Global East. The Global East as a concept. I see what's happening in East Asia, but also East Asians around the world as something quite unique, somewhat different from the rest of the Global South. When you think about the Global South, most people like to think Africa, Latin America. There are great scholars who have said, oh, Christianity is moving out of the north to the south. Interesting findings, but that global south concept really blind people from seeing what's happening in East Asia. I said, we got to have another concept. This conceptual tool helps to highlight what's happening in East Asia. So we actually started a new association, East Asian Society for the Scientific Study of Religion. I was the founding president, but now 6 years already, and it's a very much East Asian-based society. Koreans, Japanese, Taiwanese, Singaporean, Vietnamese, there are people, of course, there are always scholars from Europe and North America. To help that, I also launched the new project called Global East Religiosity and the Changing Religious Landscapes. This is the latest big project that includes 3 sub-projects. We do surveys in East Asia because I think the current survey questions we commonly use doesn't work well. It's just like using your blood meter to test your blood pressure. It cannot measure accurately. Then that's how many of the theories of secularization based on. We need to develop new questions, new instruments. So right now, at this moment, 3 surveys are being conducted in South Korea, in Japan, and in Taiwan. Then we also have the mapping projects of religious sites. We have deployed the latest technology, machine learning, AI, and all this to collect data of religious sites in these East Asian societies and put them on the map. I think it surprises many people to realize the density of religious sites in Japan. We often think Japan is one of the most secular societies. Not many people are religious if your research is based on surveys. That's true. But when you look at the religious sites, it's rare in any society that has so many religious sites everywhere. It's very similar to Italy. You turn around, there are multiple churches. In Japan, it's Shinto shrines, Buddhist temples, and many other religions coexist. But if you ask the Japanese, most of them would say, I don't have religion. Right? So we have to use that aspect to make sense of religion. Then finally, Christianity in East Asia is in a very interesting situation. In Japan, there are only 1% who are Christian. But in South Korea, it's 30%. What's going on? If you think culture may make some difference, East Asian cultures. But 1%, 30%, and when you look at the different Chinese societies, plural, you see they are in between these 2 extremes. Hong Kong, maybe 15%. Taiwan, maybe 5-6%. Singapore is getting 20%. Well, Singapore is South Asia, but the majority are ethnic Chinese. So the Chinese societies, in terms of Christianity in those societies, really varies. How can we explain that? We try to explain that by really pulling data together to come through and try to make the best sense possible. So that's the current project. So I think I should quickly move to the next thing. Give you the perspective. Global East means so much. Population-wise, India, China is so big, right? But also economic terms, Asia or East Asia, huge, right? Religion, I think so far religion in East Asia is, people don't know much. and they don't care much. But some big things may be coming up. I have to quickly mention this. Almost 20 years ago, I published an article called Lost in the Market, Saved at McDonald's, Conversion to Christianity among Urban Youth. More educated people, cultural elites. Now I'm trying to follow up because I have seen by other ways to see there are mass conversions to Christianity. There are, of course, many other religions are also growing, and atheism is still strong. Militant atheism is prevailing in the last 10 years. And China is undergoing rapid modernization, industrialization, urbanization, education, all the modern things happening in China. In that context, there's the rise of Christianity that is not stoppable. Why would I say that? Here quickly, these are estimates of the number of Christians in China. The red lines are by officials in party state, Communist Party, and the state says this from moving from 1 million at the time of the founding of the People's Republic to 38 million in 2019 or 2018. Huge growth, but still they downplay significantly. Scholarly estimates put the number to 58 million in 2010. And there are many other research centers, institutes put much higher numbers. I would just take the moderate and the lower estimates. If we project the growth in the next several decades, what's going to happen based on the annual growth rates or the compound annual growth rates that temper it. This is the picture. By 2030, there could be as many Christians in China as in the US, reaching 16%. And then 30%, 50% by the mid-century. Of course, you can say, oh, the Communist Party is right on the numbers. You scholars are all wrong. And so it will be slower, but still it will get to more than the number of Christians than the US in the next several decades, 2 to 3 decades. I tend to think that the scholars' estimates are better than the party states. So I think this is simply inevitable growth. And I show you in other ways, because we can map on the religious sites. This just indicates the rapid growth in the last several decades. At the township level, in Zhejiang province, one province, before 1949, that many towns have a church, one church or more. Then before 79, that's the number of churches in those towns. Look what has happened between 1979 and 2004. This pattern is clear in several other provinces. Then nationally, if we look at the county level, we see this is the situation of Christian churches, their distribution in China today. What's interesting is that this is so similar to the number of Christians in the beginning of the 4th century Roman Empire. Only very few places with high density, most of the Roman Empire, you don't see Christians. I think China today is like the beginning of the 4th century Roman Empire. Final question is, does that matter? Well, does this religious change matter? Well, a journalist, a reporter, David Aikman, he was a bureau chief in Beijing, Time Magazine's bureau chief. He published a book in 2003, so more than 20 years ago. he called Jesus in Beijing. This is what he said. China is in the process of becoming Christianized. That does not mean that all Chinese will become Christian, or even that a majority will. But at the present rate of growth in the number of Christians in the countryside, in the cities, and especially within China's social and cultural establishment, it is possible that Christians will constitute 20 to 30% of China's population within 3 decades. If that should happen, it is almost certain that a Christian view of the world will be the dominant worldview within China's political and cultural establishment, and possibly also within senior military circles. That depends how big you want to make it. It's certainly something happening in that part of the world. It could have great impact, not only on that part of the world, but on the world. Thank you. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Professor Yang. Time for some questions, please.
Yes, please.
Why do you think the rise in Christianity in China is so popular?
That's have to wait for my book. I'm working on the book. It is a big question. It's no easy answer. Any easy answer is wrong. Right? You have to explain why there are also a lot of Buddhist temples. Also, Confucianism is rising, influential. But I would say, in spite of all the growth of other religions, again, this is more like the 4th century Roman Empire. You see big temples built, but those temples are crumbling for some reason. But I cannot explain in a few sentences. I have to have at least a few pages to explain that. But certainly, also, all the modernization processes, industrialization, urbanization, getting more educated, are not preventing or slowing down the Christian growth. To the contrary, I think those factors help the Christian growth. A key sociological notion I want to say, perhaps mention, is congregationalism. Christian religion is a congregational religion. Other religions are not congregational. It's temple-based. You go to temple to worship for some needs, very personal, individual, rather than a collective. But a congregation means you meet regularly, share with each other, love each other, forgive each other. It's a communal organization, a strong organization. That is a strength, I think I will highlight, but also put that in comparison between Protestants and Catholics. Protestants, the number of Protestants has been growing, from 1 million to at least 38 million, maybe 58 million, or now, today, most likely is 100 million, given the growth rate, right? But the Catholics, they have been growing, but haven't grown that much. They started with 3 million in 1949 and remained 3 million in 1982. Today, it may be 6 million to 10 million, much slower. Why? I think sociologically speaking, because the Catholic organization is too strong. Once you remove a bishop, you take the whole diocese ineffective. But for Protestants, you arrest a pastor, fine. There are 2, 3 more emerge. There are Bible study groups, lay-led Bible studies everywhere. You just cannot stop it. The flexibility of Protestantism really helped in this particular political environment.
Seems ironic that it looks like the persecution and the suppression of your work has actually fanned the growth of Christianity. It would seem logical for Chinese Communist Party and the Republic to see that? Why don't they see that? Or is there a cultural mandate that they are going to suppress, even though they understand it won't work?
Yeah, it's more, I feel their censorship against my publications is because they don't want to hear the bad message. They feel this is a message they don't want to hear. It's better not to hear. They know it. I think there are people in the Chinese party state system know really well about what's going on. They know it does not work. But, China today is like a monarchy. If the top leader wants this, everyone has to follow. Not means, other high officials agree with him. I think there are people in good positions who are sympathetic or understand, at least, about the change or the inevitable change. It takes time. Yes?
Yeah, I have a question about your mapping. And so I presume that most of the sites are current sites, right? Or that were on your...
2004, the census was done.
So have you also mapped historical sites? And do you see any connection between places of strength? I would presume Catholic areas map pretty well to historical Catholicism in China. Does Protestantism do the same?
We have tried. Thank you for bringing this up. Yeah, that's why the historical dimension is so important. In 1918, Protestant churches, missionaries really, did a national census and put something on the map. Now we are in the process of analyzing that to see how much of the current sites historical legacy. I would say the Catholic churches, if you map them in those in 1918 and today's the Catholic concentrations, you tend to see the same. My home province, Hebei province, has 1/4 of all Catholics in China. So it's a very Catholic province. They have remained so. It's quite stable, steady. But what's interesting is in the last several decades, there are so many places where there was not a single Protestant church. Suddenly, there are mushroomed. This is especially in the so-called inland provinces. Most of the missionaries came from the ocean, right? So the coast, and also waterways, the Yangtze River and other southern rivers. You do see more churches, Catholics and Protestants. But now in Henan province, that's the largest in terms of the number of Christians. And in Anhui, and even in southern part of my province, Hebei, there are so many churches just emerged in the last several decades. They did not exist before 1949. Yes.
Elder care is a growing crisis in China. Do you have a sense, are Christian congregations providing some solution to this?
Christian charities. Yeah, well, that's okay. Another thing. In China, Protestants are not called Protestants. They are simply called Christian. Catholics are called, it's another religion. Right? They consider this as two very distinct religions. Both Catholic charities and social services, they have been, because this have been their long tradition since the missionaries' time. And so they do have elders' care, those clinics, but since 1979, after the policy change allowing churches coming back, the government want to control, do not want to see Christian churches, Protestant and Catholic, to do too much about social services, like orphanages or elders' care. They just want to prevent you to be more socially engaged. You believe, go home, believe in your home, but don't do social things. Leave that to the state. So it has been a struggle for both Catholics and Protestants to open anything for social services. But nonetheless, during the most open decade, from 2000 to 2010, that's the time when I did my work in China, there are many places, many churches started elders' care. First of all, their own church members. But as soon as you open it, there are other people who want to, because aging is a big problem in China. You have to. Or the state does not provide enough. So you have to find your alternatives. Yes.
Do you see in correlation, at least, of where you see Catholic churches emerging in larger numbers and the birth rate? So thinking about, one child rule versus what the Catholic Church, will say.
Yeah, that's, of course, it's very interesting. In one of the edited volumes, the latest one, 2021, we included a chapter about fertility in a Christian church, house church. During the very strict time when one child is allowed, even churches preached, encouraged to just make sure you comply to the one-child policy, no matter what you do. But as soon as it opened up, there are already clear response to it. That's showing a clear difference from the public. Overall, the public's response to the policy change is not very enthusiastic. Most of the young couples still want only one child or no child. That's what Danielle's research, a paper clearly showing that. But the Christian churches, as far as I can tell, they are more responsive to this. Actually, recently I read all the transcripts of interviews with a whole church that fled China, settled in Dallas, Texas. 60 people, 30 adults with many kids. Some of those, they are from working class people in China. Many of those have already had 3 children, 4 children, even 5 children. That because of that, this is, we can no longer live in China. We have to leave. So I see Muslims and Christians are more responsive to the policy change in that regard.
I was really, I thought the comparison with the 4th century Roman Empire was really interesting, because I was thinking, especially in relation to this last slide, if in fact more of China's sort of cultural and social establishment and the elites of the society are becoming and do become Christian, is it possible that China develops a less antagonistic stance towards Christianity, and possibly even does what the Roman Empire did, which was make
Constantine, right?
Exactly, and make it the religion of the empire or of the republic. If that happens, that obviously has implications for growth, but I think it also has implications for the political and cultural character of Christianity. It becomes sort of a religion of the state in a new way. I was thinking through that comparison, whether you had any projections on that.
That's exactly one of the issues on the table. That's why I wish more people study, because this will, not only for China's purpose, it's for the bigger world. If there is a Constantine, that will change not only China, will change the world again. Maybe not Constantine. Constantine only gave freedom to Christians. He did not make Christianity the official religion. It's by 380. I think the 3rd generation after Constantine says, we just want Christianity, nothing else. That theocracy remained for more than 1,000 years in Byzantine Empire. But in Western Europe, there are all those struggles. But what are the Chinese Christians are talking about? Church-state relations. Any possibility, there are followers. The problem is who will fight out and win. That will determine the future of China and the future to the most part of the world. So we need to know. I want to know. I cannot know all. I want more people to get involved to study them. It's so urgent to know because this could happen very quickly. Unprepared. The world is unprepared for this dramatic change. Pam, yes.
After your presentation, I think your work on Save at McDonald's inspired me in my work, my dissertation work several years ago, so I'm so grateful for that. I'm really interested in your concept of global east, right? And you mentioned eventually you were going to also see connection with new countries like Singapore. And so I'm curious to know what you're hoping that the connecting factor might be, whether it's a pattern of immigration or values like Confucianism in these countries, because I also see possibilities, right? Countries like Indonesia, although there are, right, ethnic Chinese people who have very different connections. For example, the local government who's predominantly Muslim. So I'm wondering what you're hoping that the connection factor would be for this concept of global peace.
A simple connecting factor, as we developed the association, we try to limit ourselves to East Asia for now. I said after a few years, you want to expand to Asia. I said, let's start with this part of the world that at one time Confucianism was the prevailing system, religious, ethical system that influenced certainly China, Japan, Korea, and the Chinese communities. Then once the Chinese spread in Southeast Asia, they take their culture with them, so affected the local societies as well. And one of the largest ethnic Chinese churches in the world is in Indonesia. And so Indonesia's special political climate and religious landscapes allowed that possible. And this Stephen Tong, he is also influential not only in Indonesia, not only in Taiwan and Hong Kong, Singapore, he is also popular in mainland China. So it is all one world. It's very well connected. Confucianism perhaps linked at least in the past. There's no way Confucianism will become the state religion in China. It's simply impossible, even though there are strong advocates for that. But it's not only Confucianism, it's Buddhism, Taoism combined. It's a whole habit of heart. And actually, when I responded to the book by Joseph Henrich on the weirdest people, I strongly recommend that book. He basically seeing it as a Western, industrialized, democratic, educated world. They think differently. But he left very important holes in his theory. He couldn't explain East Asians, basically. Or the global East, because East Asians are not only in East Asia, they are in Southeast Asia, in North America, Australia, Europe. They have spread beyond the boundaries of East Asia. The global East is the concept to look at that. That is somehow related to Confucianism, but it's certainly more than Confucianism. There's a whole set of traditional culture, institutions combined. It may even changed neural changes if we follow Joseph Henrich. It's changed anatomy of your brain. It takes generations to really change it. So I would look into that to have a better understanding.
I think there was one last question.
Yes, Pat.
So you suggested a couple decades ago you had a question, and then everybody asked you a bunch of other questions. You've been spending several decades answering everybody else's question. And I'm wondering if the data you've gathered and theorizing you've done helps you to, still ask, and if so, answer the question about the relationship between the Protestant work ethic and market economies or market behaviors. Because you have it in retrospect now, do you still think that's a good question that we had a couple decades ago? And if so, what do you think we learned about that question from all the data that you've gathered with your essay?
It is a question I want to answer eventually if I get there after I finish this current book on the rise of Christianity in China, and also perhaps 3 books from the current project on East Asia. Then I will get back to that. But the data I collected, I did have some small articles on some of those. For one example, the Chinese Protestant ethic is somewhat different from Calvinist Protestantism and market economy. There is affinity, clearly. One region of China has a very distinct stand out of China is the Wenzhou people. Wenzhou is to the south of Shanghai, not far away. And Wenzhou become known in the world. I don't know whether you have learned about or not, but a few years ago, the government began to tear apart churches and taking down crosses on church rooftops. That's mostly happened heavily in Wenzhou. It's because in Wenzhou there are so many churches. Almost every village there is a church. And you walk in any direction in the city, you will encounter churches within 10 minutes. Wenzhou business people also has become a world phenomenon. If you go to Rome, you go to Spain, Portugal, you will encounter Wenzhou business people. Wenzhou business people are everywhere, and many of them are Christian. So there's some affinity. But at the same time, when I went to Wenzhou, I interviewed some Christian business people. They were so happy to have the Communist Party branch in their company. Well, at least they say they're happy. They have no choice. But they could put them in use for making good profit. That's Wenzhou people. They are very adaptable, but they also are very active Christians. There's something, so I'm accumulating, but eventually hope to get to answer that question in a book-length publication.
It's been a fascinating conversation. We're delighted to have a broad range of topics at Westwood Lectures. Very proud that what might be forbidden flourishes here. Thank you very much, Professor Yang.
Thank you.